Okay, I want everyone listening to do something for me right now. Just for a second, close your eyes. I want you to picture a playground.
A playground. Okay, we're starting a grade 12 social studies deep dive with recess.
Bear with me, it'll make sense, I promise. Okay, picture that playground. On the left side, it is total anarchy.
Anarchy.
I mean, absolutely no rules. Kids are trading lunches. They're fighting over who gets the good swing. Someone is definitely running up the slide the wrong way. It is chaotic.
I'm picturing it.
It's messy, but, those kids are doing exactly what they want. Total freedom.
That sounds, honestly, a little terrifying and exhausting.
It is. But now, look over at the right side of the playground.
Okay.
There is one person standing on the highest tower with a megaphone.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
They're dictating exactly who plays where, for how long, and what games are allowed. There are no fights. It is perfectly orderly.
But nobody gets to choose their own game.
Nobody.
And that sounds stifling, soul-crushing even.
Exactly. So here's the question for you listening right now. Which playground are you? Are you the individualist who wants that total freedom, even if it gets messy? Or are you the interventionist who believes security and order are worth giving up some of those choices?
And just like that, we aren't talking about recess anymore, are we?
Not at all.
We are talking about the fundamental question of politics. How much control should a collective government have over your individual life?
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are unpacking the machinery of how we rule ourselves. We've got a stack of research here covering everything from the ballot box right here in Canada to the Iron Curtain of the Cold War.
It is a massive topic. We're going to explore the spectrum of political ideologies, figure out how a bill actually becomes a law in Canada, which is way, way more complicated than Schoolhouse Rock made it seem.
Oh, definitely. And then we'll look at the dark alternative, authoritarianism.
And finally, we'll see what happened when those two worlds collided in the 20th century.
So grab your notebooks or just turn up the volume. Let's dive in.
Let's stick with that playground analogy for a second, because I think it perfectly maps onto the political spectrum.
Right.
We hear these terms all the time, left wing and right wing. But honestly, in modern media, they're used more as insults than actual descriptions,
Or totally. They're just labels people throw around.
Yeah.
And it's confusing because people assume right always means less government and left means more government.
Exactly.
But then you look at history and you see these right-wing dictatorships with massive government control. So the amount of government isn't always the best measuring stick, is it?
It really isn't. It's better to think of it through values. Individualism versus interventionism, just like the playground.
Okay.
So if you are on the right or an individualist, your focus is primarily on freedom and tradition. You believe the individual knows best.
Leave me alone.
Pretty much. The government shouldn't tell you what car to buy, or censor the internet, or tax you heavily to pay for someone else's choices. The core idea is personal responsibility.
Basically, leave me alone to live my life, and I'll take care of myself.
In a nutshell, yes. But if you lean toward the left, or you're an interventionist, you prioritize things like social welfare and equity.
Okay, so the group over the individual.
In some ways, yes. The idea is that we're all in it together. You might argue that the government should ban smoking near playgrounds or regulate industries to protect the environment.
So using the power of the government to protect the collective good.
Precisely. Or to tax the wealthy more to fund things like universal health care or education. It's about using the government to intervene for what's seen as the greater good.
So if I agree that, say, the government should be able to record phone calls to prevent terrorism, or that we need strict gun control laws to keep communities safe, I'm leaning towards the interventionist side on that issue.
Exactly. In that moment, you are prioritizing the safety of the group over the absolute freedom of the individual. And most people, they're not purely one or the other. They pick and choose.
Sure, you can be for economic freedom, but also for environmental regulations.
Right. But here is where it gets really fascinating. We often draw this spectrum as a straight line, left on one side, right on the other. But a lot of political scientists talk about the horseshoe theory.
The horseshoe? Like for a horse? I'm not following.
Okay, visualize that straight line. Now, bend the ends downwards until they almost touch.
Okay, so it looks like a U or a horseshoe.
Exactly. If you go too far to the extreme left, you get communism, like under Stalin. If you go too far to the extreme right, you get fascism, like under Hitler.
And on paper, they claim to be complete opposites.
Total opposites. They hated each other. But in practice, what do their governments actually look like?
They look pretty similar.
They look almost identical. Secret police, censorship, no real elections, state control of the economy. They both end up in the exact same place.
Totalitarian dictatorship.
Yes. The ends of the spectrum curve around and meet at total government control.
That's a sobering thought. The extremes have more in common with each other than they do with the center.
Which brings us to the center. That's where we usually find democracy.
Which is the system we live in, right? Now, democracy is one of those words we say so much it almost loses its meaning. It's Greek, I think.
It is. Demos meaning the people, and kratos meaning power or rule. Rule by the people.
But there is a catch, isn't there? It's not just majority rule. I've heard this analogy. If 3 wolves and a sheep vote on what's for dinner,
The sheep loses every time.
every time. That's majority rule, but it doesn't feel very democratic for the sheep.
And that is the crucial distinction. Modern liberal democracy is majority rule with respect for minority rights.
Okay, unpack that.
It means if 51% of the people vote to take away the rights of the other 49%, that isn't democracy. That's just tyranny of the majority.
Right.
That's why we have things like constitutions and charters of rights. They exist specifically to protect the sheep, in your analogy, from the wolves. They put limits on what the majority can do.
So why do we stick with the system? I mean, it's slow, it's messy, everyone is always arguing. Why not just have a benevolent dictator come in and fix everything?
Well, first, finding a truly benevolent one is the hard part, isn't it? They don't tend to stay benevolent for long.
Good point.
But the real value of democracy is that it allows for peaceful change. When we want a new leader, we don't need a civil war or a coup d'etat. We just have an election.
Okay, that's a big one.
It also encourages creativity and problem solving. If you have a problem, you can't just wait for a dictator to solve it. You have to propose a solution, debate it, and convince other people that you're right.
It puts the responsibility on us, the citizens.
It does.
But let's be real, managing a country as big as Canada or the US or India is incredibly complicated. We can't just have everyone gather in a town square to vote on every single pothole.
No, that would be absolute chaos. That's direct democracy. And it might work for a student council or maybe an ancient Greek city-state, but not for a nation of millions.
So what's the solution?
It's called federalism. Think of it like a layer cake of government.
Okay, I like cake. Let's unpack the layers. Who picks up my garbage and who decides if we go to war? Because if the guy picking up my garbage also has the nuclear codes, I'm a little worried.
No, they're definitely separate. It's divided to handle Canada's size and diversity. At the very top, you have the federal government, the central government in Ottawa.
The big layer of the cake.
Right. They handle the big picture stuff that affects the entire nation equally.
Yeah.
So things like national defense, currency, foreign affairs, citizenship.
The stuff that has to be the same, whether you're in Vancouver or Halifax, you don't want to have to change currency when you drive from Ontario to Manitoba.
Exactly. And the leader there is the prime minister.
Got it. What's the next layer down?
Then you have the provincial level. This was actually a brilliant move by the Fathers of Confederation in Canada. They knew that different regions had very different cultures and needs.
Right, like Quebec needing to protect the French language and its civil law tradition versus the needs of farmers in the prairies or fishermen in the Maritimes. You can't have a one-size-fits-all rule for everything.
Precisely. So provinces handle things that vary by region. Education is a huge one. Healthcare, natural resources, and highways.
And this is where it can get messy, right? I hear about the provinces and the feds fighting all the time.
All the time. If a province wants to build a big mine, which falls under their control of resources, but the feds say it harms a river, which falls under their environmental jurisdiction, they fight. It's a constant negotiation.
So if I have a beef with my school's curriculum, I don't call the prime minister.
Nope. You call your premier or your MLA.
And then finally, the level that impacts my daily life the most, the bottom layer of the cake.
Municipal. Local government, your city or town. They handle water, sewage, libraries, parks, and yes, picking up the garbage.
Led by a mayor or a reeve. Okay, so we have the levels, but let's get into the gears. How do they actually get things done? We hear about bills becoming laws. It sounds like a really boring process.
It can sound that way, but looking at our notes here, it's actually kind of an obstacle course.
An obstacle course.
It really is, and it's designed to be difficult on purpose. You don't want laws passing too easily or too quickly.
A knee-jerk law.
Exactly. So a bill is just a draft proposal. It's an idea for a law, and that idea can come from anywhere. A community group, a political party's platform, or some crisis that needs solving.
So let's walk a bill through this obstacle course. Where does it start? Step 1.
Introduction. Usually it starts in the House of Commons. The bill is presented, printed, and distributed to all the members of Parliament. We call this the first reading. It's basically just the government saying, hey, everyone, we want to talk about this. No debate yet.
Just putting it on the table. Then they start arguing.
Then comes the second reading. That's the big debate on the principle of the bill. Do we generally like this idea? Is this something we should be doing? They don't get into the tiny details yet.
Okay. And if they go yes?
If they vote yes, it doesn't become law. Not even close. It goes to what is arguably the most important stage, the committee stage.
This is the part people usually skip over in the news, but it seems vital.
It's where the real deep dive happens within the government. A small group of MPs from different parties gets together. They call in witnesses.
Witnesses, like in a courtroom.
Sort of. They'll call in experts on the topic, citizens, organizations that will be impacted by the bill. They examine every single clause, line by line. This is where they can change the wording.
And these changes are called amendments, right?
Right. They can add things, remove things, clarify the language. It gets a fine-tooth comb.
Okay, so once the committee is done tinkering with it, what's next?
It gets sent back to the House of Commons for a final debate and vote. That's the third reading.
And if it passes there, are we done? Is it a law? Pop the champagne.
Nope, not yet.
Yeah.
Then it has to go to the Senate.
Ah, the second chamber.
The sober second thought. And the whole process repeats. First reading, second reading, committee stage, third reading, all over again.
And the senators in Canada are appointed, not elected. They're supposed to be less political, right?
That's the idea. They're meant to look at the bill from a long-term perspective and catch mistakes the more partisan House of Commons might have made.
Like the designated driver of legislation.
That's a great way to put it. Now, if they change the bill, if they make even one tiny amendment, it has to go all the way back to the House of Commons again.
It's like a ping pong match.
It is. It has to be the exact same text passed by both chambers. Only then, finally, does it go to the Governor General for royal assent, a signature.
And then it's a law. Wow, that seems incredibly slow.
It is. But that's the point. It prevents those knee-jerk laws we talked about. It forces debate and compromise.
Now, we've mentioned MPs and voting, but the way we actually pick those people is, well, it's got some quirks. The math gets really interesting here.
It does. We live in a representative democracy. Since we can't all fit in the House of Commons, we hire reps to go there for us.
And to do that, we divide the country into areas called ridings.
Right. And just for a vocabulary check, the people living in that riding are called constituents.
And the winner of the election in that riding gets a seat in the House of Commons.
Correct. Now, in Canada, the UK, and the US, we use a system called first past the post.
It sounds like a horse race.
It works exactly like one.
Yeah.
To win your riding, you don't need a majority of the votes. You don't need 50%.
You just need more than the next guy.
You just need one more vote than the person who comes in second place. That's it.
This leads to what our research calls the plurality problem. Let me see if I get this. Imagine there are 5 candidates running in my riding.
Okay.
I could theoretically win with only, say, 30% of the vote.
Right.
Provided the other 70% of the vote is split up evenly among the other 4 candidates.
Think about that for a second. 70% of the people, the vast majority in your riding, voted against you.
But I still won. I represent all of them. I have 100% of the power in that riding.
Yes. And when you scale that up to the whole country, you get something called an artificial majority.
This is a really key concept for anyone listening.
It is. A political party can win the most seats, a majority of the seats in the House of Commons, which allows them 100% of the power to pass laws without any help. But if you look at the popular vote, the actual number of Canadians who voted for them, they might have only received 39% or 40%.
So the system amplifies the winner's power. It makes the government look way more popular than it actually is.
It absolutely does. Now, if you think that's tricky, look south of the border at the American system, the Electoral College.
Oh, boy.
It's first past the post on steroids.
The U.S. system. So when I watch the news on election night and see millions of Americans voting for a president, they aren't actually voting for the president.
No, not directly. Technically, they are voting for people called electors.
Okay.
Each state has a certain number of these electoral votes, and it's based roughly on its population. California has a lot, Wyoming has just a few, and almost all of the states use a winner-take-all rule.
Winner take all. So if I win the state of Florida by just one single vote, one guy named Steve showing up at the last minute, what happens?
You get all of Florida's Electoral College votes. Every single one.
And the person who got millions of other votes in Florida?
They get 0. Their votes in the final count essentially vanish.
Wow. And this became incredibly famous, or infamous, in the year 2000.
The election between George W. Bush and Al Gore.
I remember this. Gore actually won the popular vote across the entire country. More actual human beings voted for Al Gore.
That's true, by about 500,000 votes. But the election all came down to a handful of votes in one state, Florida. It was incredibly close. And there were huge issues with the physical ballots.
Right, the famous butterfly ballot. What was that?
The design was just, it was terrible. The names of the candidates were on 2 pages that folded out with a single column of punch holes in the middle.
I'm trying to picture this.
The arrows didn't line up perfectly. So a lot of people, especially elderly voters, thought they were punching the hole for Al Gore, the Democrat. But because of the alignment, they accidentally punched the hole for a third-party candidate, Pat Buchanan.
Wait. A graphic design error might have decided the presidency of the most powerful country on earth.
Essentially, yes. Bush ended up winning Florida by a tiny, tiny margin. We're talking just a few hundred votes out of millions cast.
And because of winner-take-all.
He took all of Florida's electoral votes, and that pushed him over the top to win the presidency. It shows how the machinery of voting, the literal paper, and the system matters just as much as the candidates.
Is there a better way? Some countries must do it differently, right?
Many do. A lot of European countries, like Sweden, for example, use proportional representation.
Proportional. So it's about proportions.
It's much more mathematically fair. The logic is simple. If a political party gets 10% of the national vote, they get 10% of the seats in Parliament.
Okay, that sounds great for smaller parties, like the Green Party here in Canada.
Exactly.
Under first past the post, they can get tons of votes spread out across the country, maybe 5% of the total vote, but win 0 seats because they never come in first in a specific riding.
Right. But in Sweden, if they get 5% of the vote, they get 5% of the seats. They get a voice in the government.
So what's the catch? That sounds way more fair.
The downside, and there's always a downside in politics, is that it almost never produces a majority government. No single party gets 51% of the vote.
So you end up with minority governments or coalitions?
Constantly. Which means you get lots of bickering, parties have to team up, they have to compromise on everything.
Which can be good, but it also sounds unstable.
It can be very unstable. It's much harder to pass laws, and governments can fall apart easily, leading to more and more elections. Look at Italy or Israel. They have elections constantly.
So it's a trade-off. Do you want fairness, which you get with proportional representation, or do you want efficiency and stability, which you tend to get with first past the post?
That's the fundamental choice.
Okay, so we've got the machinery, but how do we make sure these politicians we elect don't turn into dictators? How do we keep them honest?
Well, we have a toolkit of freedom, you could call it. A set of safeguards built right into the democratic system.
All right, let's volley these. I'll throw one out, you unpack it. First up, rep by pop.
Representation by population.
Yeah.
The idea that every vote should have roughly equal weight. We reorganize the ridings regularly so that one MP represents about the same number of people as another MP.
Right. You don't want a rural riding with 500 people having the same power in parliament as a city riding with 100,000 people. That would be wildly unfair to the city dwellers.
Exactly. It keeps things balanced.
Okay, next one. Periodic elections.
This is the ultimate reset button. The politicians have to come back to us, the voters, and ask for their job again. In Canada, we now have fixed election dates, usually every 4 years. They can't just say, you know what, I'm doing a great job, I think I'll just stay for 20 years.
They're always on a short leash.
Always.
Here's my favorite, the secret ballot. And there is a story here, right? The beer bribe.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
Yes. In the old days, back in the 19th century, voting was often public. You literally stood up on a platform and shouted out who you were voting for.
Wow. No privacy at all.
None. Which meant your boss or your landlord could be standing right there. Or, more commonly, candidates could bribe you. A candidate might buy you a beer or a whole keg for the town to watch you vote for them.
But with a secret ballot.
You can take the beer, thank him very much, walk behind the screen, and vote for the other guy.
Perfect.
They never know. It breaks the power of intimidation and bribery because they can't verify how you actually voted.
Brilliant. Take the beer, vote your conscience. Okay, next. Independent courts.
This is absolutely crucial. The politicians, even the prime minister, are not above the law. If they break a law, a judge can hold them accountable.
And the government can't just fire a judge they don't like.
That's the key. The judiciary has to be independent. The referee has to be separate from the players on the field.
Makes sense. And finally, power of the purse.
The prime minister isn't a king with a personal treasury. The money, the tax dollars, belongs to the country. The government has to present a budget every year, and Parliament has to vote to approve it.
And if they lose that vote?
If they lose a vote on money, the government falls. It's a confidence vote. It forces them to be accountable to the people's representatives for every single dollar they want to spend.
So that's the happy side. That's the playground with the rules we all more or less agreed on. But what happens when we reject all those liberal values? When we decide the messiness of democracy just isn't worth it?
Then we drift to the other side of the playground, to authoritarianism.
This is where things get heavy. We're talking about things like oligarchies.
Ruled by a few elites, usually the wealthy.
Or juntas.
Military rule.
Yeah.
And the generals take over.
And the big one, the one at the ends of that horseshoe. Totalitarianism.
Totalitarianism is exactly what it sounds like. The government controls totally every single aspect of your life. Not just your taxes and your job, but your friends, your family, your religion, even what you're allowed to think.
And the 20th century gave us two terrifying large-scale examples of this from opposite ends of that spectrum we talked about.
Hitler and Stalin.
Okay, so let's distinguish them first because, as you said, they hated each other.
They did. Hitler, representing fascism on the extreme right, was driven by a specific hatred of liberalism, of Jews, and of communists. His goal was to rebuild the German Empire and establish so-called racial purity.
And he was supported at first by the elites and the industrialists.
Yes, they thought they could control him. They were wrong.
And then on the other side, you have Stalin, representing communism on the extreme left.
Stalin was driven by a twisted version of Marxist ideology. His stated goal was to eliminate class conflict by eliminating entire classes of people. His slogan was, "Workers of the world unite." He wanted a global revolution.
But despite the different slogans, the different ideologies, they use the exact same toolkit to stay in power.
The exact same playbook. We call these the techniques of dictatorship.
What's number one?
The first and most obvious is terror and force. You rule by fear, not by consent. Stalin had the gulags, a network of forced labor camps in Siberia where millions died from starvation and overwork.
And he didn't just target his enemies.
No, he conducted the Great Purge, where he wiped out members of his own political party if he even suspected them of disloyalty.
And Hitler had the Night of the Long Knives, where he systematically murdered his own political rivals to consolidate power. The message is clear. If you speak up, you disappear.
The second technique is indoctrination. This is about controlling the minds of the future generation.
The youth.
Yes. Both regimes immediately rewrote school textbooks to make themselves look like saviors. They created youth groups, like the Hitler Youth, to instill loyalty from a young age. They used propaganda to make the leader seem godlike, infallible.
I always find the third one the most cynical, scapegoating.
It's incredibly effective because it's a brilliant distraction. If the economy is bad or people are hungry, a dictator can't take the blame. That shows weakness. So they find a target.
An enemy.
An enemy to blame. For Hitler, it was primarily the Jews. He blamed them for all of Germany's problems, creating an internal enemy to unify the people against.
And Stalin, who did he blame?
He blamed the kulaks. These were the slightly wealthier independent farmers. He blamed them for resisting his collectivization of agriculture and for causing famines that his own policies created.
So you create an us versus them dynamic to distract people from the government's own failures.
Don't look at my bad policy. Look at those evil people over there who are sabotaging our glorious nation. It's a classic move.
And finally, a really insidious one. Controlled participation.
This one is so tricky. They make you feel like you're a part of the system. They hold enormous parades, massive rallies. They even hold elections.
Elections? But they're dictatorships.
Exactly. But there's only one name on the ballot. You are often forced to vote to show your loyalty, but you have zero actual power, zero choice. It's performative democracy. It's an illusion of participation.
So by the middle of the 20th century, the world was basically divided. You had these two massive opposing forces. The democratic world, led by the US,
and the totalitarian communist world, led by the Soviet Union. And eventually, they had to clash.
And that brings us to the Cold War.
The Cold War.
Why do we call it cold?
Because it never got hot. The two superpowers, the US and the USSR, never fought each other directly on a battlefield. Yeah. It would have been too catastrophic.
So it's a different kind of war.
It was a battle for the soul of the world. A battle of influence, of economics, of propaganda, of spying.
Winston Churchill famously described the border between these two worlds as the Iron Curtain.
Such a great image. A line that fell across Europe. On one side, you had the Western democracies. On the other, the Soviet satellite states in Eastern Europe, Poland, East Germany, Hungary,
Yeah.
all under Moscow's control.
It was an ideological and a physical separation. You literally couldn't cross it.
Not without risking your life.
The strategies here are really interesting. It was like a global game of chess, but with the highest stakes imaginable.
The Soviet strategy was pretty straightforward. Expansionism. They wanted to spread communism to new countries. They truly believed the revolution had to be global in order to survive.
And the American response was the opposite. Containment.
Just like it sounds. Keep it contained, don't let it spread. We can't eliminate it in Russia, but we can build a wall around it and stop it from touching, say, Greece or Turkey or Western Europe.
And how did they do that?
Two main ways. First was military aid. That was the Truman Doctrine. The U.S. basically said if any country is threatened by a communist takeover, we will send you guns and money to fight back.
And the other way wasn't with guns, but with money. The Marshall Plan.
That was the economic side of containment, and it was brilliant. The U.S. sent huge amounts of money to rebuild Western Europe after the devastation of World War II.
Why?
The idea was simple. Communism breeds in poverty and desperation. If a country is prosperous, stable, and happy, its people aren't going to vote for a communist revolution.
So you basically buy them happiness to keep them democratic.
You could see it that way. It was a massive sphere of influence turf war. Who could offer a better life?
And nowhere was this conflict clearer than in the city of Berlin.
The Berlin Wall. It was the physical embodiment of the Iron Curtain, a canvas of concrete, as it was called, dividing a single city in two.
East and West Berlin.
On one side, you had freedom, capitalism, bright lights. On the other, total control, scarcity, secret police. People were shot and killed trying to cross that wall to get to the West.
You mentioned they didn't fight directly. Why not? Why didn't the U.S. just invade Russia to end it?
2 words, nuclear weapons.
Right.
By the early 1950s, both sides had them. And this created the terrifying concept of MAD.
Man-Bay, which stands for?
Mutually assured destruction.
Yes, suicide pact.
Exactly. If I launch my nuclear missiles at you, you will have just enough time to launch yours back at me before mine land. We both get completely annihilated. There is no winner.
So the terror of that outcome, what they call deterrence, is actually what kept the peace between the superpowers.
Paradoxically, yes. They couldn't shoot at each other because it would mean the end of the world.
But that didn't stop them from fighting in other people's backyards.
Not at all. We call these proxy wars.
Proxy, meaning they use substitutes.
Right. Instead of fighting directly, they would each back opposing sides in smaller conflicts around the globe. This was all driven by the domino theory.
Ah, yes, that domino theory.
The American fear that if one country in a region fell to communism, its neighbors would inevitably fall too, one after the other.
Like a line of dominoes. Vietnam falls, then Laos, then Cambodia, then Thailand.
That was the fear. So we got the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. These were brutal, hot wars with millions of casualties, all fueled by Cold War ideologies and money, but fought by other people.
Eventually, though, the Soviet Union collapsed. It couldn't keep up.
Its command economy was incredibly inefficient and corrupt. It couldn't provide for its people. By the 1980s, a new, younger leader came to power, Mikhail Gorbachev.
And he knew things had to change.
He did. He tried to fix the system. He introduced 2 famous policies. The first was perestroika, which means restructuring. He tried to introduce some market-like reforms to make the economy more efficient.
And the
Glasnost, which means openness. He allowed people to criticize the government a little bit for the first time in decades. He thought it would help identify problems.
But authoritarian regimes are like a pressure cooker, aren't they? Once you crack the lid just a little bit.
The whole thing blows. Once you give people a taste of freedom, they want it all. The system just completely unraveled.
The Berlin Wall came down in 1989.
An incredible moment. Germany reunited. And by 1991, the Soviet Union itself had dissolved.
The interventionist playground collapsed under its own weight.
In that particular instance, yes, it did.
Okay, let's unpack this. That was a lot of history. We started on the playground. We looked at that spectrum individualist on the right versus interventionist on the left.
We saw how democracies use complex machinery federalism that built a law obstacle course and different kinds of elections to try and balance freedom and order.
Then we looked at the dark side, how authoritarian regimes like Hitler's and Stalin's used terror, indoctrination, and scapegoating to enforce total control.
And finally, we saw how those 2 ideologies battled it out during the Cold War through policies like containment, through proxy wars, and under the constant threat of nuclear destruction.
Before we let you go, let's do a quick check to see if you were listening. I've got 3 questions for you. I'll ask, give you a second to think, and then we'll drop the answer.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, question 1. A political party wins a majority government, that's 100% of the power, but they only actually got 39% of the popular vote across the country. What do we call this phenomenon, which is common in first-past-the-post systems?
Yeah, that is an artificial majority.
Question 2. A dictator is facing a crumbling economy, so he starts blaming a specific minority group for all the nation's failures in order to distract the public. Which technique of dictatorship is this?
That is scapegoating or directing public discontent.
Perfect. And finally, question 3. During the Cold War, the USA didn't attack the USSR directly, but they tried everything they could to stop communism from spreading to new countries. What was this foreign policy called?
That policy was called containment.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from all this, it's that democracy is a fragile experiment. It isn't a guarantee. It isn't the default state of humanity. It requires participation.
Right. It relies on the will of the people, as they say. If you don't vote, if you don't pay attention, if you don't participate, does the system still work for you? Or does it start to look a lot more like that other playground, the one where someone else is holding the megaphone?
That's the real question, isn't it?
Keep asking questions. Class dismissed.